today. I hope that you can hear me okay. If at any point during our quick 1 hour session together today, you are not able to see the slides, or if my mic goes out, please just type a note in the chat box. And I know that Kelly will help me get that amended if needed. Well, I'm so excited to have you. I'm really happy to share some resources on ways that we can think about dementia in our community for our patrons in our libraries, and also caregivers of our patrons. So we're going to look at a couple of different ways that libraries can think about how to serve our communities, as we may have families, patrons, and caregivers kind of working through in Alzheimer's dementia diagnosis, and kind of look at some of the stages involved with that as well. So again, I'm Erin Gray. I'm a library services and technology trainer for Amigos Library Services, and that's my contact information. So I'll post that at the end of today's session as well. If you want to reach out to me for any additional resources, I'm happy to try to help in any way. So just a couple of things today. We're just going to start our session together, just kind of really taking a look at how Alzheimer's dementia is defined, and then kind of look at some current initiatives happening in libraries, nationwide at this point, in terms of looking at ways to help make our communities more dementia friendly. And then we'll also look at some potential partnerships that libraries can explore to kind of strengthen those services as they kind of move into better supportive for their community. So I just like to get started every time, of course, with what is Alzheimer's dementia. And as you can see, this is the definition and description from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. So when we think about Alzheimer's dementia in our communities, the estimation from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services is that we have more than 6.2 million Americans age 65 and older that may have Alzheimer's. And Alzheimer's disease is also, currently ranked as one of the leading, causes of death in the United States. So among the kind of top 10, leading causes of death in the United States, Alzheimer's disease is up there. About 1 in 9 people age 65 and older have Alzheimer's dementia. So when we think about, if you just think about your community and your population that you serve for your library, just kind of keeping in mind that potentially, around 1 in 9, patrons that you support, age 65 or older, may have Alzheimer's dementia. Some other things about it: more women than men have Alzheimer's or other dementias, and almost 2/3 of Americans with Alzheimer's are women. And then about 83% or more of the help provided to older adults in the United States. I think many of us probably know this, but that support really comes directly from family members, friends, and then other unpaid caregivers. And so the other thing we want to recognize about Alzheimer's dementia in our community is that we have huge numbers of caregivers who are also our library patrons, who may potentially be looking for, welcoming environments as they care for their loved ones, visiting our facilities, and then also, services that we can provide to support them as they kind of move forward in their caregiving roles. So just a couple of things I just want to kind of cover in terms of Alzheimer's dementia. I just kind of want to give you some information here. I won't read through this whole slide because it's a long one, but I just wanted you to be able to take a look at kind of often the types of Alzheimer's dementia that we're really seeing. So everything from frontotemporal dementia, right? And this is the one that's, tends to be more rare. Other ones that we tend to have our patrons navigating are, Lewy body dementia, even vascular dementia. For some of us who may be working with, patrons who are, facing these diagnoses, there are stages of Alzheimer's dementia, and I'll kind of break that down a little bit too. But in addition to frontotemporal, Lewy, and vascular dementia, there's also just, mixed dementia. And so oftentimes our, patrons in our community, they may be facing, kind of a mixed dementia diagnosis. And that's because with Alzheimer's and, vascular dementia, there are a lot of, changes happening in the brain all at once. And so I'm going to kind of break this down a little bit more. I want to pause here just for a second, though, and just check in with everyone. Please let me know in the chat if you have questions as we go along, or if you have some resource or service that your library is currently providing on this topic. Please feel free to pop that in the chat as well. I think we're all definitely here to kind of share with each other and learn. So another thing that's really important, in addition to really understanding just the large number of patrons that we're serving who are navigating Alzheimer's dementia, I think it's also, oh yeah, thanks. Tabitha has a question here. Do you know which kind of dementia comes from brain lesions? I'm not sure, Tabitha. I am not a health expert in Alzheimer's dementia. I do have a personal family experience with being a daughter and full-time caregiver of a parent with vascular dementia. So I have some experience there. But let me pop back up to, the screen. I'd say probably, Tabitha, to your question, I've got some links I'm going to share to a couple different resources that will probably break that down some more. I think we can definitely find that answer out for you. So let's look kind of, once we start, oh, you're welcome. Once we start thinking about, just the sheer number of patrons that we're serving who are navigating Alzheimer's dementia, it can be really helpful to make sure that as library staff members, one of the best things we can do once we know this information is to start thinking about, okay, what are the signs and symptoms? Okay, so when my patrons are coming into the library or I'm interacting with them, out in the community, maybe even on, through phone or chat, what are some things that I may be noticing? And so you can see this list here. There's a lot of different signs and symptoms, but the list that you're seeing here are kind of present in all of these different types of Alzheimer's dementia. So of course, on the top of the list here, you can see this is one we probably think about most frequently, right? Memory loss, poor judgment and confusion. We're working with a lot of library patrons who are working through the different stages, I should say working through, experiencing the different stages of Alzheimer's dementia. And so you may notice if you had developed a long and positive rapport, maybe with library patrons that you see, each week or multiple times a week, you may start noticing things like, them losing some ability to speak, or maybe you notice they're having more and more trouble, expressing thoughts or words and things like that. Another thing let me know in the chat also, as you're joining me, if there's anything on this list that you worked through with a patron, let me know. I've certainly run into kind of all of these working with patrons over the years in public libraries. Sometimes just, using unusual words to refer to familiar objects, that can be really common. Issues with balance and movement, absolutely. And then maybe sometimes, some of us may have had it happen where we have a library patron who, is exhibiting, confusion might even have confusion about things like how they got to the library, where they parked their car, all sorts of things. And so we just kind of want to be aware of these things. Now, I do want to point out here that a lot of the things on this list can be completely related to other medical challenges that our patrons are facing, right? So if you're like me, I'm looking at this list thinking, well, this could also be other things that my patrons are facing, but this at least gives us kind of a starting point. And yeah, Tabitha has here, with memory loss, we provide a way to keep a list of previous books they're reading, so they aren't reading repeats. Absolutely. There are lots of little things that you can do to help, kind of strategies that you can use. I think that one of the really great approaches about different Dementia Friendly America, and I'll share the resource link to that, is given all the patrons that we serve in our communities who may have Alzheimer's dementia, there's lots of great strategies that we can use on a daily basis to help them, such as the one that Tabitha's mentioning here too. So other things we may see with Alzheimer's dementia are just things like maybe repeating questions, maybe taking longer, than you've previously observed to complete normal tasks. So you might have a library patron you're working with, and maybe you've known them for years, but you're starting to notice that, there are various things they're trying to do in the library that are just taking longer than they normally would have. So this kind of leads us just to looking at the stages of Alzheimer's dementia. And, every single person who is navigating Alzheimer's dementia, will sometimes move through these stages on their own sort of time cycle. So it's important to point out here that, one of your library patrons may move through the stages of Alzheimer's faster than another patron. And also for caregivers of patients with Alzheimer's dementia, one of the things that can be really challenging for caregivers, and it's good for library staff to know, is there's no perfect guide to tell that caregiver when their loved one is going to be kind of moving to the next stage of Alzheimer's dementia. And sometimes it can be a rapid movement from say the second stage to the fifth stage pretty quickly. So just really kind of quickly, the first stage here, and you can see in the color screen there, but I want to make sure I read it off because I think it's kind of small on this slide, so I apologize for that. I have noted here that this is called the FAST scale. So on the slide, and it was developed by the New York University Medical Center's Aging and Dementia Research Center. So you can just do a search for, FAST and Alzheimer's dementia, and that will bring this up for you. But stage one, of course, is, basically where there's no impairment. There's no trace of Alzheimer's in the brain. It's probably just, our patron at that point is, just going about their life as per usual, right? They know where the car keys are. They're able to, do the things they enjoy doing. But stage two is a very mild decline. So stage 2 and stage 3 are both considered mild decline stages. So these may be stages where the person experiencing Alzheimer's dementia, they might start kind of noticing that they're forgetting things a little bit, or maybe they're just not, keeping their schedule the way that they would normally like to. They may start doing things like, carrying around a little notebook to help them remember things. Typically at stage 2 and stage 3, oftentimes you'll find, family members of their loved ones starting to help their family member, keep track of things. And so that's pretty common. And so in this case, if you're starting to see a library patron who you've known a long time, and you're starting to notice some changes, this is a great time to, when you're giving them information, make sure you're putting it down on a Post-it note for them. If you're helping them with a tech issue or a website, go ahead and print out screenshots of whatever the tech issue is that you're helping with. So if I'm helping them with, let's say Libby on Overdrive, right? If I'm helping them with the Libby app, I'm going to take some screenshots of that Libby app and actually put it on a document and print it out for them, so that they can take that with them, because I'm seeing and knowing that they may need that extra support. And then of course, there's, stage 4, which is moderate decline. This is where for the patient, the memory tests, have indicated that there's a high possibility of Alzheimer's disease. And generally there's more conversations at that point going on about, strategies to help that person and help their family support them. And then of course, stage 5 and stage 6, those are the stages of, severe decline. So at stage 5 of Alzheimer's dementia, patients really begin to need help with day-to-day activities. And so at stage 5 and stage 6, this is where you may see some of your library patrons coming into your facility, with their caregiver and loved one, as they're kind of moving through this. You may start noticing that they are accessing library services, but they're doing with the help of their caregiver at that point. And then of course, stage 7 is a very severe decline with Alzheimer's dementia. And so it's great to kind of know this information. I think this is a really great one to share with your staff members. So if you're wanting to give them a little bit more information about what to know about the stages, I think this can be really, really helpful. It helps you understand that you may be working with library patrons well over many years, and then you're seeing kind of these stages move through. And so there's a lot of great resources out there that can help us. I was glad to see Tabitha's question, because I think I'm a library and information professional, and I have, like I said, some personal family experience with caregiving for a patient with Alzheimer's dementia, and specifically vascular dementia. But I always need all the help and resources that I can get. I'm going to put a couple links into the chat that I'll try not to inundate us. I don't want to overwhelm everyone, but a great place to start is alzheimers.gov. This is from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the National Institutes of Health. And it's a fantastic place to get started. They just kind of introduce, Alzheimer's dementia, the causes of dementia, and lots of additional information too. There's also things like just kind of understanding different types of dementia there, and maybe understanding, how they're treated and things like that. We'll kind of move into some other, resources as well here, but I think that's a great one to get started with. So it's been a couple of years now, but really since about 2015 and beyond, we've seen so many great kind of initiatives nationwide from lots of different communities that are really recognizing the need for all of us to be aware of the growing numbers of patrons in our communities who are navigating Alzheimer's dementia. And another great place to kind of get full resources is Dementia Friendly America. And I put their link in the chat. It's just dfamerica.org. But Dementia Friendly America, it's a national network of communities, organizations, and individuals that are seeking to ensure that communities across the United States are equipped to support people living with dementia and their caregivers. And the movement began in 2015, excuse me, and one of the first statewide initiatives that we saw was from Minnesota. And then we had many other states follow after that, including Colorado and Maryland, California, Arizona, and West Virginia. And so we see communities continuing to use the Dementia Friendly America toolkits and resources to really help bring services into their community, and especially libraries. So if you're joining me today and you're thinking about, what are some programs that I could offer at my library, maybe some partners to bring in to help us, learn how to be dementia friendly in our facility and also through our programs, this is a great one to start with. I would highly recommend going through their community toolkit. Dementia Friendly America has an entire kind of 4-phase toolkit that your library can work through to help you think about everything from how the design of your library is laid out to some kind of programs and services that you can offer as well. And so what are some of the goals of Dementia Friendly America? Because as I mentioned, it's incredible resource. Overall, really the goal is, for dementia friendly communities, the goal is to raise awareness about people living with dementia in your community, and also helping all of our nonprofits, libraries included, be ready to collaborate with all those different community partners to help those who are living with dementia and also their care partners. And of course, also all of the resources that they provide to helps give us insight to maybe some facility design, thinking that we can work on to improve these spaces that we have for our patrons who are navigating various dementias. So what are some of the reasons that, our caregivers, come to the library? So many times we have caregivers in our community who have a family member who has, just been diagnosed with Alzheimer's dementia. And it's really important that we are equipped and we know about resources that we have and things that we can do to support them. I can definitely share as a daughter of a parent who had vascular dementia, it can be really scary when a caregiver gets that diagnosis for their parent or loved one, and trying to kind of navigate that can be really tricky. Oftentimes caregivers, especially if they don't have any sort of healthcare background, if you will, they may not even be sure what kinds of questions to ask. They may be unsure about all the resources that they should be looking for. So I put another link in the chat. This is one I really like a lot. It's from alzheimers.org, so alz.org. And it's a whole packet that's specifically designed for, patients and also their caregivers on, what kind of things to think about and kind of get information gather about being diagnosed with Alzheimer's dementia. And so this is a really great one to take a look at. I think this one is helpful, even if you're the library worker who's wanting to learn more about Alzheimer's dementia. This is definitely a guide from alz.org that would be good for directing caregivers to as well if they're kind of working through a new diagnosis, because it can be a lot of new information for both the patient and the family member. And then also alz.org also has kind of just some information about the basics of Alzheimer's dementia, and some additional information about, brain research around Alzheimer's dementia. I think that's a great one to kind of take a look at too. But what about some things that we can do? So if I want to, today think about, how to make my library more, dementia friendly, and how do I support my patrons and my community? There have been some fantastic resources, out there that are available. One of the really great ones that I like a lot came from one of the state initiatives for Dementia Friendly America, and this one is from Massachusetts. And one thing I really like about the resources that they've built is that you can see I've got a little screenshot here, and I'm going to put the link in the chat because I know the screenshot's kind of small, but this is from Dementia Friendly Massachusetts. And one thing that they did that's been a little bit different from some other states working on dementia friendly communities is they actually created templates that anyone can use. And so I really encourage you to definitely take a look at this link for Dementia Friendly Massachusetts. They have a number of free resources. So if you look on their resources tab, they have a lot of great resources, and they have wonderful templates that you can print out. So if you're creating a program or a service or something around Dementia Friendly America, you can actually just go right there, and you can see here they even have a nice little checklist that library staff can even use to kind of make sure that we're thinking about things we need to look at for our facilities to support our patrons. So what about some communication tips with our patrons navigating Alzheimer's dementia? These are just a couple of basic tips, and these are from the International Federation for Library Associations and Institutions. They developed a whole framework and guidelines for library services to persons with dementia. And so these are the go-to communication tips that we should be using. We want to make sure that we're always keeping great eye contact. Make sure that we're getting the person's attention before speaking. Just things like making sure to use simple language, right? And I think a lot of times as library professionals, we try pretty hard to avoid library jargon. We want to use simple language. We need to understand for supporting our patrons navigating Alzheimer's dementia, that we want to think about repetition, consistent phrasing, trying to use simple yes and no questions. And another thing that's really, really important when serving this specific community of users, we want to make sure that we're allowing ample time for answers. So kind of slow down a little bit. You may have to repeat the question a couple times, and then to make sure you're just really slowing down for answers. Some of our patrons with Alzheimer's dementia are, they're navigating a myriad of, communication challenges, and, they may be hearing your question loud and clear, but they're just needing a little bit more time to, formulate their response. Other things too, of course, I think this is hopefully something we're all doing with all of our library patrons, but just being calm and being supportive. For that patron who may be navigating this, it's confusing and scary for them too. So the best way we can match that in support is, being that great listener, repeating things as needed, and just giving a little extra time and space for them too. So what does it look like when we think about our facilities and how we can support these communities through the design of our facilities? A couple of things that we can think about to make sure that we're providing quiet space is really important for any of our library patrons, but additionally, any of our patrons who are experiencing, heightened anxiousness or confusion, finding them a quiet space can really be helpful. If you are working with a library patron who, we're not asking you, of course, to be a healthcare person today. You're not here to, diagnose anyone. But if you're working with a patron and you're seeing some of these signs and symptoms that we looked at, just making sure that if you're trying to provide some extra support for them, see if you can help them navigate to a quieter space if they need to, just so that they can hear you and get the support with their questions. Other things we want to think about is signage, lighting, and flooring. We want to think about things like, are my signs clear, right? Do they have a bold face with, good contrast between, text and background? Is there a contrast between the sign and also the surface that it's mounted on? Things like that help these communities recognize it as a sign. Other things like just thinking about our most of our signage, is it at eye level and is it well lit? We want to make sure that signs are placed at key decision points, so that if we have someone who's navigating the building for the first time, they can find everything. Are there clear signs in our buildings for toilets and exits? These are some extra support things that this community will definitely need. Other things, are glass doors clearly marked? For our patrons navigating Alzheimer's dementia, glass surfaces and things like glass doors, they can be problematic sometimes if there's not some sort of, sign or wording or something on the door so that they can identify it. I'm thinking of a glass door maybe that even has the word, enter or entrance on it. Even that additional word on the glass door can really help them, with navigating. But we'll look at a couple other like design checklists too that I can share with you. So just some other things we want to think about is, of course, as I mentioned, in addition to all our patrons navigating Alzheimer's dementia, we have huge numbers of patrons in our community who are now the primary caregivers for their parent or loved one navigating this. And so they really need resources too. So what are some things that we can do for persons with dementia and their caregivers? Well, really and truly, honestly, if you look at this list, a lot of the things that we're already providing as regular library programs and services, we can also provide for our specific, Alzheimer's dementia community. So I see a lot of libraries nationwide who are offering craft programs specifically for their Alzheimer's community, gardening programs. Feel free to let me know in the chat as you're looking at this if any of you, offer any of these programs currently. And I applaud you if you're working on that. I think it's great. One of the things that's really important about these additional programs is they work best if they're offered, specifically for this, user community for your library. So making it very specific that it's, a dementia-friendly, program. And so a lot of the libraries that are having great success with this, they're developing separate programs from, their regular general programs, and they are creating these as dementia-friendly, gardening programs, chair yoga, other things like that. This could be really great for caregivers in the community, because when you provide these programs in your library, it gives your patron navigating Alzheimer's dementia a great place to connect with others and, enjoy music and crafts and things like that. But it also gives a place for caregivers, to meet other caregivers and kind of get that, additional support from others. And so those are things that can be really helpful. So beyond that, we also want to think about how we can help create, dementia-friendly, library collections. And so dementia-friendly library collections, these are collections where items are developed specifically for people living with dementia and also their caregivers. So this may include materials that you order that have information about understanding the diagnosis and planning for the future. It also might be items that you provide that can help connect people with memories. We've even seen these at libraries, memory kits and things like that. And then also, some libraries have actually kind of put together collections where, they have a special tag in their catalog that says, dementia friendly. Yeah, and Tabitha's got here, could providing lists for caregivers to use? Yes, absolutely, Tabitha, that's a great one. The other thing we can do too, as Tabitha mentions here, is, if you don't have necessarily, we may not all have the shelf space or the design in our facility to have a whole separate, collection that's dementia friendly. But as Tabitha notes here too, what you can do is go through and do that audit of your existing library collection, and locate those things that are supportive of, the caregivers and also your patron too, and put those in a posting, an article posting for the library, or, one of those linked bookmarks, things like that. Let me pop to a couple of other kind of examples for you, just so that you can see what the wording looks like. So if you haven't held any of these programs specifically at your library, here's kind of an example. This is a really nice one I just wanted to share. This is from Essex Library, Essex Library Association, and they're in the UK. But they, you can see here that one of their strategies was providing an Alzheimer caregiver support group. The other thing that you can do too is, if you're not able to provide this separate support group in your library setting, you can also contact your local healthcare campuses, hospital campuses. A lot of times these groups are already happening on our various hospital campuses. And so the other thing the library can do is just find out when those are happening. Make sure that library staff are aware, so that if you have a patron or their caregiver coming into the facility, you can let them know, hey, here's a couple of books about this, let me know what else we can provide. I know that, such and such hospital down the road has, an Alzheimer caregiver support group, just things like that can be really, really helpful for both the patient and the caregiver as well. I'm going to put one more link in the chat. I just realized that I forgot to pop it in here before, so I apologize for that. I had mentioned that the International Federation of Libraries and Library Associations and Institutions has developed guidelines for library services to persons with dementia. So I put that link in the chat. That is an Adobe PDF. If you go to the page, you can go to the Adobe PDF, but it is a great set of guidelines and framework for preparing your library to better serve persons with dementia. So I think that's a great one. So if you're kind of getting started with your coworkers, your staff, and you want to kind of work through some framework together, that's a really great one. Some other things that can be really, really helpful are, like I said, just to Tabitha's note here too, what are those, books we can let our patrons know that we have, things like that. These are just a couple that I would recommend. I think these have been really good ones for a lot of libraries working on their, dementia-friendly support. All of these really great. This one's, 6 Steps to Managing Alzheimer's Disease and Dementia. That one's specifically a guide for families. It's a great one. if you have a loved one who, is mentioning to library staff, hey, I need to learn more about, Alzheimer's dementia, right? For a lot of patrons we have in our community, the loved one that they're going to be supporting, that loved one may live far away, right? So a lot of us, maybe, adult children of parents with Alzheimer's dementia, and, we may have a parent who is, at the time several states away. So we would be coming to the library to, maybe we've just learned about a diagnosis and we're thinking, I need to figure this out and learn more. These are some great ones. In terms of activities for people with dementia, so for those of us who are kind of focused on wanting to think about, any programs or outreach, things that we offer, this really great one, it's called Creative Engagement. This is a pretty new one. It's just came out, I think about 2 years ago, maybe less than that. But it's a great one. It has actually hands-on activities listed in it. So if you haven't tried some of these programs before and you're thinking about, what does that look like? What could I offer? That's a really great one. I would definitely recommend. So other things that we can do, of course, any of those kind of kits that we can think about building if we have the budget to support them. A lot of libraries have been really successful with memory care kits. And these are kits that usually include items for people in various stages of Alzheimer's and their caregivers to enjoy together. This is an example from Delphos Public Library. So I just wanted to show you an example shot of one of their memory kits. And of course, there's lots of different, kinds of memory kits that you can create. But sometimes those are really helpful in communities too. So what else is working really well for Dementia Friendly America? Lots of not only Dementia Friendly America feedback, but also just research in the area of Alzheimer's dementia is confirming that pet therapy is really, positively embraced by our patrons who are navigating Alzheimer's dementia. We found that, if someone, with dementia, let's say they had a pet, most of their life, or maybe they had several pets, just reconnecting with animals can actually be very therapeutic for this community as well. And I want to mention that because I know a lot of us may have, those, I knew at one of the libraries I used to manage, we had, story time, or not story time, but like reading to the dog. We have a dog that would come in the library and that was trained for that purpose, and the kids could read to it. But a lot of communities are also finding that those, animal visiting hours at the library for this community as well is really great. So the other thing we want to definitely cover, and I want to make sure I do this before we head out today, because it's really, really important, is whenever we have one of our library patrons who is, kind of in those stages where they may be approaching an official diagnosis, and then, when they are diagnosed, Alzheimer's dementia, like any other, disease that any of our patrons experience, it affects not only the patron, but it also affects, their entire family, their friends. And so we as library workers also need to be equipped to help our patrons find, information about, how did they talk to their family members about the diagnosis. I can say from my personal experience, having had a young child when my own parent was diagnosed with Alzheimer's dementia, I got so much great help from, public librarians about, what books can we take home to read? How do we talk about this? How do I talk to my, child about, what kind of information do I need to give them? What's the right amount of information to give them and understand what's happening. So I put a link in the chat. This is from alz.org, but they have a whole kind of resource and information. What's really nice about their site, I want to point out though, is that they have kind of a specific guide site that's just for talking to young kids about Alzheimer's. And then they also have a separate one specifically geared for teens, which I think is great. They have a section on resources for parents and teachers. So if you are also thinking about, hey, maybe I, help facilitate youth services programs in my library, I think it would be great to see more libraries offer at least a program or two each year on, supporting, our family members with Alzheimer's dementia, but specifically for our young families. So just a couple of, there's so many great books out there now. I'm so happy. Everything from picture books to chapter books that help kids kind of connect with what's happening. These are some great ones that I really like. Granny Needs My Help by Deborah Mills. This one is from the publisher, of course. They set it at about ages 5 to 9. This one came out in 2020. I also really like Grandma and Me. It's a kid's guide for Alzheimer's dementia by Beatrice Tuber. This one is geared for ages 4 to 6. So if you were having kind of a, that story time age or even upper elementary age, this would be a great one to provide. Other ones I highly recommend, of course, the Space Between Lost and Found. This is by Sandy Stark McGinnis. It came out in 2020. And this one is for our, elementary age students primarily. So it's geared for ages 8 to 11. It's a chapter book, wonderful story, but also kind of gives, kids kind of a space and reading time to kind of explore this. And then last year, probably I think I would say one of the books that I always recommend if your library has a little, extra funding to buy additional copies of, some resources on this topic. I highly recommend the 36-Hour Day, specifically the Family Guide. This is a really great one that will really help your patron families kind of understand what to look for. Yeah, not right off I don't have any on the screenshot today, Tabitha. Tabitha's asking, do you have a teen level recommendation for books explaining it? The one that we just looked at kind of was geared for ages 8 to 11. You know what I would take a look at? Let me click on the link here. And thank you for that question. I really appreciate it. Definitely, I want to find out some that are out there specifically for teens too. Tabitha, I put the link in the chat. This is the most up-to-date guide from alz.org, specifically for teens, and they may have some links or recommendations in here for some books specifically for teens as well. So I would definitely take a look at that one. So some other things we can think about in terms of, possible programs for the library. A lot of us have community healthcare partners. There are so many great advances happening in research for Alzheimer's. And so something that libraries are beginning to do is see if a lot of libraries have successful panel, programs where maybe they'll bring in a couple of community partners from healthcare organizations who have obviously experience with Alzheimer's dementia, and kind of providing just some community programs where they can learn more about Alzheimer's dementia, and then also research in Alzheimer's dementia. There's a lot of great things happening, and I'm really hoping that we'll see lots of advancements that will really help our communities. So just other things to kind of take a look at, as I mentioned, alz.org always has, brand new things they have available. So definitely, taking a look at that, and also considering, what are some other things, that we can do to kind of help our community. There's a link I'm going to put in. I kind of mentioned it earlier, but I tend to be the type of learner when it comes to library program where I want to see kind of specific examples of things that I could offer in my library. This is a link here from the Wisconsin Healthy Brain Initiative, and this is their whole toolkit on building dementia-friendly communities. But definitely take a look at it because they actually provide really great information about specific services and programs that they initiated. So you can actually take a look at that and kind of, duplicate that if you're interested for your own community as well. So again, just kind of going back to what I mentioned at the beginning, I just kind of want to go back to that list again. We just want to make sure that all of our staff, have some kind of, I would say, kind of beginning information about Alzheimer's dementia. It's really important. We are only going to see the number of patrons we serve in our communities. We're going to see the number of patrons with Alzheimer's dementia in our community increase, probably significantly, even in the next, 2 to 5 years. We're going to see those numbers increase. And so we really want to make sure that our staff have some, starting resources to be prepared for this. Again, making sure that our staff understand at least, the 10 warning signs of Alzheimer's. Yeah, I'm not sure, Tabitha, you've got the great questions today. I am not in Alzheimer's research. So if I was, I could probably tell you exactly why they're doubling and tripling. According to the Wisconsin toolkit that I just shared, they indicate that, based on the current estimates, they're predicting that those with dementia will double by 2030 and triple by 2050. So, we are just going to continue to see huge increases in patrons accessing our facilities and our services who have, dementia. So, why are the numbers increasing? I'm with you, Tabitha. I think that's where I need to bring in, the panel of healthcare professionals who are experts in that area and have them tell us more about it. I certainly would love to know more. So that was the toolkit that I just shared. So that link is in the chat. Really, really great one. I highly recommend looking at that, especially if you're wanting to see, what are the specific programs that we could be offering and how do I do that? The other thing that the International Federation for Library Associations and Institutions is really recommending is that all of our libraries, especially public libraries, really start taking a look at the design of our facilities and figuring out, what are some things we can do to just improve the flow and the design of our facilities to really help these communities. And I see Brenda's note here too. Yeah, USF Tampa has an ongoing study in Alzheimer's dementia. They've been looking for healthy volunteers to participate and be studied over 3 years. Oh, thank you for sharing that, Brenda. This is a kind of really important information that we want to be sharing. Brenda, if you have any link or anything for that, please feel free to pop it in the chat so that we can all, be aware of it and even, send our patrons that way if that's something that might be a fit. Again, it's also important for me to note here too that it's not just our library patrons who are navigating Alzheimer's dementia, right? This is going to be some of our beloved coworkers, those of us who might find ourselves being the primary caregiver for someone with Alzheimer's dementia. Those are also our coworkers, and so we want to be able to support each other. So this link I put in here, if you are like me and you wear that facilities management hat, or I have worn it in the past, this is a really great resource. It actually came out of the Journal of Health and Information Libraries Australia, and it's basically just it's a great kind of resource about it. It has several different There's about 4 different handbooks within this link, and they are all accessible to you. So they're in PDF format. But what's really nice is it actually takes you through rubric and assessments for looking at your own library facility and seeing like what are some changes that I could potentially make to, just kind of the placement of my furniture, lighting, shelving, just things like that. What are some things that I could do to improve my facility for these communities? And there are lots of basic things we can do. Some of them are just kind of like updating our signage or kind of moving it in different areas. I mentioned earlier some changes sometimes we can make to lighting, just kind of looking at the navigation of our sidewalk services within our facilities, and kind of making that best approach. But this is a really great one that I found that I know the screenshot's really small here on your screen, but if you access this link, you'll be able to kind of go through all those rubrics. I found it really helpful. Honestly, as a public librarian, I wish that I had had these handbooks years ago to kind of work through when I was thinking about how to make our facilities, more accessible. And just some closing things. These are some other, publications I would definitely, recommend to our library staff. So this is a really great one. I would highly recommend. It's called Dementia, Together. It's How to Communicate to Connect. It's by Patty Biliak-Smith. And then also really great one, Library Dementia Services. This one came out in 2020. It's by Timothy Dickey, and it's about how to meet the needs of the Alzheimer's community. And then also in here, I'm just going to mention there's one called Creative Care. This is a newer one as well. And it's just it's more designed for the caregiver themselves, but if you're thinking about planning some programs for your patron and their caregiver, this will give you some great kind of insight into that. Well, we are near the end of our hour. Oh, thank you. I wanted everybody to take a look here. Brenda, thank you so much. Brenda's provided a link here from USF Tampa about their ongoing study on Alzheimer's dementia. So for those of you who have communities, that might be able to take a look at the study and have, those in your own library community take a look. Thank you for that link, Brenda. Well, I just want to pause here and take any questions that you might have. I really appreciate your being here today. I really appreciate all your questions. I know I gave you a lot of different resources, so I hope that they'll be helpful. Tabitha's got, we do outreach at a retirement home. We're trying to come up with more program ideas that we host on site for them. Yes, absolutely. Tabitha, I would definitely go for the creative engagement book. Let me pull that screen back up here. Creative engagement is a really great one that will give you immediate activity program ideas to do with those communities that you're serving. Oh, you're welcome, Amber. Absolutely. Well, you have my contact information, and Kelly has that too. So please feel free to reach out to Kelly or Vicki later if you need anything additional. And I just thank you all so much, and I hope you have a great rest of the week.